Why is shipping so expensive for board game Kickstarters? I'm going to try and answer that for you guys and tell you exactly what is going on. All right, so we used to not really talk a lot about shipping. That's because shipping wasn't too expensive. It was a very minor part of your purchase. The board game itself normally cost quite a bit more. But as of late, we've seen shipping prices, this is for the last maybe 2 years or so, really skyrocket to where they're now 50% or higher of the whole order when it comes to your board game and what you're getting. Now, it's not always the case, and it seems that some companies can ship just fine and there's barely a peep about it, and others really struggle and they're really expensive and people complain about it a lot. So what exactly is going on? To actually get to the bottom of this, we have to go into the past a little bit and talk about what happened during COVID that suddenly had shipping so expensive. So if you didn't know, often when you buy something, the cost of freight is included in the purchase price of the product. That is literally the case for everything you buy outside of board game Kickstarters. That is universally how it works. In other words, anytime you buy something, you pay shipping, you're paying for them to ship it from their warehouse to your door. And that's shipping. You don't pay for them to get the product to their warehouse, right? The t-shirt company you buy from or the Walmart or any grocery chain you go to, anything like that, like you're not paying the freight cost separately, right? If you order something online and it ships, that doesn't normally include that. But that's because freight price was pretty stagnant. It was pretty much a set amount of money, and you could just include that in no problem, or even eat the cost. It wasn't actually that much. So maybe just make a little bit less profit and you just pay for it, whatever. That's fine. It would, even if you did add it to the price of the pledge, it wouldn't add that many, right? Because freight is when you take it like from China where it's made and ship it in a big cargo container, right? That fills a whole bunch of those, and a huge ship that has a whole bunch of those, and they ship them over to various continents and then deliver them to various warehouses, which then deliver it to your final door. And that freight cost per item in that container, very small, a couple bucks maybe, right? Like it wasn't that big of a deal, right? In other words, if I can store 300 of them, well, then maybe it's only, $3 a piece or something like that, right? I'm just throwing out numbers there, but that's kind of the idea. So it wasn't too big of a deal. Well, during COVID, there was a big issue where a lot of people started buying more, and then also they weren't shipping them back, so there was a shortage. There's a whole lot of things that happened during COVID, but essentially the price went wild. It went crazy. And so suddenly, everybody that had thought to include it in their pledge price had to do one of two things. If they had already charged for shipping, they had to either not be able to deliver, try and get money elsewhere, try and ask you for money, ship it and go out of business, right? It's like those were kind of your options. Suddenly you're faced with this huge bill that you were not planning on doing. If you hadn't charged for shipping yet, though, well, suddenly you can just include that in the shipping charge. Now, granted, that's not how anything else ever works ever, but for the Kickstarter board games, these big box board games that we like to buy so much, suddenly the freight became a huge ticket, and they started putting it into the shipping price. Well, once people were already used to paying high shipping, i.e. shipping plus freight, then, you could keep doing that. And not only that, but it also allowed you to keep your funding cheaper on your list price. In other words, on the campaign, it looked like it was lower, and it's because more of it was, the freight was taken out of that and put into there. So now some companies were including the freight in there and looking like a worse deal because it was more expensive, and some looked like a better deal because it was cheaper until they get you in the shipping where they took out that part that everybody else charges you and put it over there, right? So in other words, it's like this hidden amount that they do. The only other thing I'll mention before going into an update and like kind of reading things off and explaining what the current situation is there was a big issue with Command & Marvel Zombicide that kind of showed what a lot of companies were doing, which is just copy and paste the shipping part. In other words, you have this Kickstarter page full of information, you have like risks and challenges and stuff like that, and for a large part, you either copy somebody else's when you're first starting out, or you copy your own from last time and just paste it right in there. And they were still doing that with the lower shipping cost. So when the actual shipping cost came and Command couldn't afford to pay for it anymore out of pocket, they couldn't subsidize it or anything like that, then suddenly that price was there and it didn't match what they listed, right? Now, ever since then, they've listed it higher, so everybody knows point blank, yeah, it's going to be super expensive. But why is it still super expensive? Like, what is going on with that? Well, let's go on and read an update. This is from Tenaris Adventures Ultimate Edition, and it'll shed some light on it, and then I'm going to add the other piece. So right here in this update, they were talking about some of the pledge manager stuff, including shipping, which seemed to be really expensive. It says, we understand that the current shipping price isn't inexpensive. It's quoted without any subsidy. When we priced the upgrade kits close to the manufacturer's cost minus the Kickstarter fee, we eliminated our margin to absorb any shipping expenses. Originally, the kit was priced at $99 with $45 to the book and cards. We further reduced these prices to show appreciation to our backers, to whom we are and will always be deeply grateful. However, this decision eroded the little margin we had to subsidize the shipping. In other words, what they did is when they first priced it, they had freight in there and perhaps even a buy down on the shipping. In other words, you're actually paying part of the shipping in that price. In other words, from their profits from that, which they have more profits, not that they charge more, they'll pay down some of that shipping. So you're only paying a portion of the shipping, right? It's kind of like the free 2-day shipping is actually paid, by you still. You see those memes where it's like, oh, hey, it's $30 plus 10 shipping. No. Oh, it's $40 in free shipping. Yes, right? Same kind of idea here. So in other words, they took that money out and said, okay, you guys don't like the price of that. We're going to make it cheaper. But it's not actually cheaper. They just moved it over here to the shipping, and now the shipping's more expensive. And that's exactly what they did there. And that's that subsidy that they're talking about. Essentially, if everybody's paying X amount, we're going to take part of that X amount and put it into shipping to make shipping seem cheaper to you when you purchase it. Now, this doesn't explain why it's still expensive. We'll get to that. But that kind of explains that kind of shift from the sticker price to a hidden secondary price that a lot of people are surprised with these days. We could opt for a cheaper shipping company, but given the volume of different products, what might seem beneficial now could lead to issues like incorrect deliveries, delays, and other complications down the road. Before we get into more of the shipping thing, this is actually a really important point. There are multiple options for these companies and multiple prices that they can ship at. Not everything is, even in the freight, right? You could get climate controlled freight so that all your cardboard perfectly fine, no mildew, no nothing, you're perfectly good. And guess what? You're going to pay more for that. You can get various amounts of insurance on that. It's just like when you ship something. It's very, very similar. There's a myriad of options of different companies you can go through. Some charge more, some charge less. Some do better jobs, some don't. Some offer better tracking, some don't. Some offer like sign-on stuff and pictures and updating and all that kind of, depending on where you go, depends on the price. So there is a variety of prices, and that's both for this last mile shipping, which I'll get to in a moment, and the freight. Both sides, there's a large variety. You as a consumer don't get to pick it though, right? You get whatever they decide to ship with. More often than not, companies are going to try and get the more expensive ones because they are better. Or they come with better insurance, they're better at tracking, they're better at actually delivering their product. Because one of the most expensive things a company can have to do is send you another game. Or fix damaged product, especially something like a box, right? Where suddenly now they have to ship you an empty box just to replace your damaged box or whatever, and one mini that you had. And then, of course, that mini could also get damaged if you cheap out on that. So then you have to send another one. I've seen them send them in just like baggies pretty much, and then the replacement gets damaged. And so it's not only is it costly from a financial standpoint, but it's costly from a customer standpoint. Because now you're having this kind of bad experience with them where you get this game, but it's all crappily thrown together and not organized well, or they didn't pack it very well, or whatever the case is. Your first enjoyment of this game isn't much of an enjoyment at all, right? And so they very much tend to pick the more expensive ones because of that. But of course, that raises prices. So there's a TLDR here, and says the price for each pledge have been reduced to the lowest possible, which, while it means we can't subsidize shipping now, it ensures that backers get a great amount of content for the lowest price. Again, this actually is not true. The price is the same. They just took the money from the pledge and put it into the shipping. So now suddenly they got a lower pledge and a higher shipping versus a higher pledge and a lower shipping. Either way, you are paying the same price. They're not actually saving you any money there. It just feels like you were at the time of the Kickstarter, and now that you're on the hook, now they get you with the shipping, right? That's kind of the idea of taking expenses out of that and putting it elsewhere. Now, it also says here the initial Kickstarter price estimates were for the base pledges. This was clearly present on the Kickstarter page. That's kind of a BS thing. I talked about the copy-paste thing a lot, and one of the big things they like to do is make sure that the shipping cost matches what's available day one. In other words, when you first launch the product and you don't have all the stretch goals, you want the shipping nudge because you don't want to include all those Kickstarter exclusives and stuff like that they add there, right? You don't want to include that there. The shipping will seem really expensive for just the core box, and people wonder why. Now, companies could update this shipping table. They just choose not to. In fact, it's very, very rare. It does happen, but it's extremely rare for a company to update a shipping table. And typically if they do, it's to update it down by saying we're going to pay for it for blah, 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 or whatever, if there is some issue. But they rarely increase it. Now, technically they should, right? And they should, as stretch goals unlock, they should add that. And they know what the stretch goals are because there's already renders, there's already art, there's already name, there's already design concepts involved. Like, they understand adding one more mini means this or whatever. Like they can get some good estimates there on the price. So they just don't. And it's not just Dragori Games or anything like that. This is across the spectrum. A lot of companies do that, especially when it comes to listing the core price only for shipping and not including any expansions that they have already planned or stretch goals that they've already planned. And so that price is now wrong and it's incorrect, and they don't update it until they're ready to charge your card, right? And that's kind of a bummer. Okay, so let's look at what's currently here. So I just paid for my Aeon Trespass Odyssey stuff. As you can see, I added all the stuff. I spend a lot of money in this industry, by the way. I'm very invested in it. Thank you to my patrons for allowing me to be able to operate in this capacity on this channel. It is definitely thanks to them that this is possible. So thank you so much. Thank you, patron, if you appreciate all the content I show on this channel. It's an expensive hobby, guys. It really is. I paid €105 for shipping. Now, I feel that's actually a pretty good price for everything I just ordered, and I think that's lower than what their actual cost will be. Because this is two-wave shipping, so they'll ship a whole bunch at the beginning and then a whole bunch afterwards as well, all the way out to 2025, right? And it's almost impossible to predict what the price will even be then. Hopefully, the company's just still running and doing well to be able to do that. But yeah, it's definitely probably lower. They're definitely subsidizing some of that. And some of that's probably in the €480 I already paid them, right? I mean, this isn't exactly cheap stuff, right? It's an expensive game. So either way, that's the latest thing I showed. I just wanted to show you, here's a big pledge. This is a lot of game, two-wave shipping. Right now it's about 105 of a total of 480. So definitely not half or anything like that. I am in the US, so I do benefit from that a little bit. But either way, like a big difference there, right? But Deceased is coming out, and people are concerned about the shipping because Command now definitely does not subsidize any shipping. They charge you full price. But I talked about COVID, right? COVID's in the past, right? That's at this point, the container shortage years ago. What's going on? Why is shipping so expensive now? Well, I spoke to a few devs, and they all said the exact same thing. The freight is down. It is now to pretty much where it was pre-pandemic, right? It is as smooth sailing as it was, and it seems to be sticking there too. So it is fairly consistent. In other words, it's normal. In fact, it's actually doing fairly well right now. Okay, so like freight, good. It's good. We were worried that would last a long time, especially with like consumers buying more online and stuff like that. Nope, totally fine. It helps that nobody can afford to buy anything these days. Last mile shipping, though, has skyrocketed. Now, what is that? So I mentioned how they took freight out when they shouldn't have, of course, and put it into shipping to hide the costs there, right? Hide that higher expense. And now as the freight has gone down, the last mile shipping has gone up. Now, last mile shipping is, that's what they call it. It's just shipping. It's normal shipping from the warehouse to your door, right? It's you buying something online and having it shipped to your home from their inventory, whether that's their house or a warehouse or wherever it is, under a bridge somewhere. It doesn't matter. The point is, it's from there to your home. Normal shipping prices. And those have indeed gone up a fair amount. A lot of it is just the cost of gasoline right now, obviously very high. That's a big deal there, especially because like they can do some of it in like big trucks, but for the most part, then it goes to like the smaller places to actually go to your home. And you may be the only one in your city that got this game, right? And so they have to ship it to there, right? And so that's become more expensive. And of course that ebbs and flows. Now, from what I can tell, it hasn't offset the freight cost for large games. So it depends on what you're buying too, right? And of course the quantity, and that, nothing is apples to apples, but for big box board games that take up a lot of space, this cost is just how much space and weight it takes. And that's it. That's pretty much the hard part there. So they can only fit so many, especially in these smaller trucks going out to you guys and stuff like that. So anyway, that's the excuse for the kind of discrepancy. Is freight has gone down now, but last mile shipping has gone up. Now it is, again, every developer is different, right? And about what their freights are costing. I already talked about how they have selection there, plus their games are different, and how people back it are different. And then of course last mile, same thing. You have many options there when it comes to fulfillment. Ideally they're paying somebody who will actually get it to your home, and it'll be great. So that's kind of why shipping is so expensive. The other thing, and this is a personal aside, so this is me talking like me from here, not necessarily anything that they said, but in general, prices go up, not down, right? So if consumers are used to paying X amount, well, you just charge them X amount. Why would you charge them Y, right? We talk about like, obviously a lot of the companies here on Kickstarter are very small scale, definitely not like, Fortune 500 company kind of things. But in general, your profits go down if you don't make as much revenue, right? Or and unless you change something, right? So if you can't charge them this and they'll pay it, well, why would you charge them that? You're just now making less money, right? So there is a general tendency just in all of business. And I'm not saying anybody's necessarily doing this. I'm just saying like this is something you should expect from businesses, right? Prices go up, they don't necessarily go down unless they absolutely have to. So these companies, the ones that survived COVID and the whole pandemic stuff and all the shipping stuff, are run at an efficient enough level to where these people know exactly how to make money to keep fueling their company and keep delivering these games that you love. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just in general, it's not going to be like, oh, hey, we had savings, so we're going to give those savings directly to customers. Often it's, hey, we got savings, so now we've made this much more profit. We can invest that much more now into good quality talent and artists and a better game for next time, right? It doesn't necessarily come to you in the sense of like dollars, right? Obviously, they're spending it on something, whether it's a raise for their artist or for themselves or, whatever it is it kind of stays in the company, right? So that's kind of the idea there. In fact, when I first announced that GameFound would start handling some of the shipping stuff, one developer actually left a comment saying, I don't like this because if I get a savings now, I don't get that, right? In other words, if I charge this amount for shipping and then afterwards I'm able to haggle a cheaper deal, because this happens all the time. It's a common enough thing for this person to even make a comment about. And then I make some savings. Now I don't get that savings because I charged this, but it only cost me this, right? So that can happen. It definitely can, especially as you play around with the numbers. Shadowborn Games famously was able to save tens of thousands of dollars to their bill just by playing around with regions and stuff like that. So it's definitely certainly possible. That's the excuse. Last mile shipping has offset freight, and of course, it's just going to be expensive because people are used to it being expensive, right? And you don't get a lot of like clout for like having cheaper, right? And again, if you take it out of shipping and put it into your normal price to subsidize that, well, now your normal price looks more. There was a time when I went to Gen Con. So this was a little bit ago. This was, I guess, a little bit over a year ago now. And when I went there, I talked to two different devs, and they were talking about taking freight out versus not. And one dev said, well, it's totally fine to take it out because either way you're paying the same amount. To which the other dev, of course, responded, well, yeah, but one is being a little bit more dishonest, right? I would kind of agree with that. I think the price should be the price to actually go there, and shipping should only pay for shipping. The problem is the actual shipping part right now is a bit more. Now, there's one comment I want to leave you guys with. This right here. Gary Conception, he said this a while back. This was on the Terrace update. And he said, I'll complete my pledge solely because refunding would cost me a bit over the cost of shipping. And while I don't want to pay the extortion amount for shipping, I'd rather do so and get what looks to be a great game rather than be out on the cancellation fees. To which Robert responded with, I think once it gets to your table, your frustration will fade away and you'll have a great experience. This is something I have seen firsthand constantly. Backers for these board games are very easy to please. They honestly are. To the point where a good delivery offsets a lot of bad junk. Kingdom Death Monster was slacking on getting Gambler's Chest out for a long time, and got a lot of crap for it, a lot of angry backers. But then they actually did finally deliver Gambler's Chest. And you know what? There's not nearly as many angry backers anymore. People are a lot more nicer to them now because at the end of the day, they did get a good game. In other words, us consumers, we complain a lot, especially when we feel like they're not doing the company isn't doing what it should do to get us the game that we paid for perhaps years ago. Once that game comes there, that $50 that you paid is yesterday's $50. Today is Awesome Board Game Day, right? And so that kind of offsets that a little bit. I'm not saying that's something that should be used to a company's advantage. What I'm saying is, at the end of the day, often you do end up with a really cool game that you do enjoy. And it's good that it ends well for consumers, even if it perhaps shouldn't be overlooked as much. Kind of hard to stay angry, I guess, right? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Of course, if you have any opinions on this that differ from mine or the same, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I am actively talking with several developers about shipping and about costs and pledge breakdown and all that kind of stuff. So if I can take what you guys are actively looking at, what the community's looking at, they want to know that. I would love to share that with them. And I'm sure there's a few of them looking through those comments as well. So thank you so much. Again, thank you to my patrons for allowing me to do this channel. It's very expensive and I buy many of my own games and I couldn't do it without your support. So thank you so much. There's a link down in the description below if you would like to join a YouTube membership or Patreon. It is very, very nice. But if nothing else, if you aren't subscribed, perhaps you should subscribe. I cover a lot of these great games. Singularity reviews coming out soon. It's also coming out on GameFound soon. I'll be covering that. I'll be showing that off. Of course, Deceased, I'll be showing that off as well, and a host of others. So if you haven't subscribed, trust me, you're going to want to. I'm going to try and get you guys some good stuff. End of year's coming, which means a lot of great top 10s as well. I'm super pumped to make those for you guys. So stay tuned. Thanks a lot. Have a great day. Bye, guys.